Yeah, so I'm in Little Oosburn in York, and
Oh,
it's been 34 degrees today. So I think it's the second hottest day ever in the UK in July. So it's been
wow. Well,
so
now,
a little hot. Yeah,
well, 34 degrees here is very cold. The 34 degrees where you are is very, very hot, isn't it?
it
I'm
is.
trying to translate that. It's over 100, isn't it?
It's about 100. Yeah, right, it's about 100.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're live, so let's it's awfully good to see you, and I'm sorry about the heat. Do you have air conditioning?
Yeah, no, not we're not used to this
No, I know.
in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Oh my God, Yorkshire. I know Yorkshire's supposed to be cold. Oh, holy cow. Well, now everybody's seeing us engaged around the weather. Let me introduce Steve Conley just a little bit, and then he can introduce himself in other ways. But I had the great privilege to meet Steve and was just stunned by his relationship and his understanding, very quick, of life planning. And what was exciting for me was at that time was that he was working for one of the largest banks in the world. And by some accounts, the largest bank in the world, based in the UK. And he had a position of significance. And what was astonishing for me and wonderful for me is that usually in those large institutions, there's very little understanding of life planning, which is what I've obviously what I've done in my career. What I've introduced into financial planning is a way of listening to the clients, of spending time with the clients, so that they become so that huge trust develops between you and the client, and your main objective is to deliver the client into their greatest dream of freedom as quickly as you possibly can. So the money is very much secondary, but extremely important. And what has happened in virtually every large institution that we've attempted to bring life planning is ultimately the profit motive and the product sales have gotten in the way of their care and concern about the client. And one of the terms for it we have in America, of course, and it's used in England too, is fiduciary, that they have really failed in their fiduciary objectives. So what was astonishing to me was that Steve got it, and he had the power to bring us in, and we did a magnificent program there. But then the forces of the narrow-minded forces that were product-oriented and profit-oriented, as opposed, I mean, we all believe in profits, but as opposed to client-oriented, really got into, I think, a battle with Steve. And we don't need to go back there necessarily, but so we weren't able to bring it all the way through that great bank. So Steve's been profoundly committed to the client, to fiduciary, and also to very good causes. He was one of the early readers of the Golden Civilization book. And in fact, he was a reader way before anybody, when it was called the Banking Manifesto. He was back there and he read it then. And very, very profound social conscience and belief that we need to do something. And so that's a big introduction. He's a great fellow. And I'm so pleased to have you on, Steve. Please correct all the mistakes I've made.
Thank you, George. No, you're absolutely spot on. It was 2011 when we ran the pilots at HSBC. Yeah. Basically, what it was that I was a proposition architect for the bank. I was head of investments for HSBC, and I'd launched many a big project. Yeah. But the biggest challenge for the bank was trust. And I researched the entire market looking, well, where is the most trusted advice model? And it was, Georgia, it was your life planning model. It's the EVOKE process. Yeah. So we came in, we brought you in, we trained and piloted it with a dozen advisors from City branch and Canary Wharf branch. And, it was
and they loved it. They came in, it was the first night, it was the darkest night of my training career, because they were sitting there like this, and we're not going to do something that corporate tells us about clients. And by the end, they were totally in love, passionate about it. weren't they, Steve?
They were, and the customers then that we put in front of those advisors said it was the best financial conversation they'd had in 25 years.
Oh.
And we were able to demonstrate that it's actually far more profitable model than the one that they used before. We called it the customer relationship dividend, George. I don't know if you remember that.
You sure do.
It was what happened is that before we put a trusted advisor in front of a client, the client would only give £1 out of every £8 that they had to invest with the bank. But once they trust the advisor, then it completely changed. It's more like £8 out of 8. And also the number of meetings that they were having, 4 meetings before they'd actually sign up a client.
Wow.
And again, with the trusted advisor, they were sending people in and they were ready to sign before the meeting had even begun. So it was more profitable. But what happened is the banks, what they decided was that they didn't believe in it. They thought actually it was a lot more profitable to actually get rid of all of the advisors, and all the banks at the same time in 2012, 2013, actually laid off 10,000 financial advisors across the industry. Wow. And that disintermediated 95% of the population now no longer had access to financial planning in the United Kingdom. And that's been my focus ever since, because they were then, the banks focused the marketing budgets on debt and lending. And now by 2020, the average unsecured debt in the United Kingdom is half of annual pay. Wow. So it's like condemning everybody to this like debt slavery, and there's no way out. Yeah. So really my focus, George, I've obviously trained as a registered life planner myself, master life planner, and I've really been focusing my attention on EVOKE in great depth ever since. Ever since that day, I've done nothing else other than this for the last years.
Wow, Steve.
That's why I'm so excited about your books and the work you're doing. The Golden Civilization is amazing, you know, that what you're doing, bring it out into the community, because it's the cure. Yeah. The EVOKE process and the life planning process is the cure for this this difficulty that citizens have been placed into. So I'm really inspired by what you're doing, George.
Well, thank you, Steve, and likewise. As always, you've been an inspiration to me from day one, and I'm curious. It might be useful to tell people a lot of people in our community know what life planning is, but there are a lot of people who don't. So, how would you describe EVOKE for an individual, and then how would you take it over to this notion of civilization, and why would you want to?
Okay, so it is a process of planning your life before you plan the money, and I call that the productive cycle. You know, an exhaustive cycle would be to look at your money and then work out what you could do with it, because you kind of that's a limiting, and that's completely exhaustive. Or there's a destructive cycle, is where you just look at your money, you don't look at your life whatsoever. That's completely destructive. So it's a productive cycle. And George, I've not shared this with you, but I've been studying EVOKE so much, and I've been tracing it. There's actually a very similar, it's called the natural cycle from creation to manifestation. Wow. And it is the EVOKE process. Yeah. And I found it in all faiths and all traditions. So in indigenous populations, it's called the medicine wheel. Wow. In Buddhism, it's called the Eightfold Noble Path. In Shinto, it's called the natural cycle from creation to manifestation. And it begins in spirit. And the exploration, it begins in spirit. And it's creating goals that are inspiring in spirit. And then it takes it to the heart and the emotion, because we have to be really light the torch. That's where you light the torch, is in heart. But then through obstacles, we have to ground the vision of this amazing life, and we ground it through obstacles in the EVOKE. And that becomes into the physical realm. It's now real and possible. And then we use our knowledge. So we start to move. So we've moved from spirit, heart, body, and now we're using our mind. So it's actually a mind, body, heart, spirit cycle, which is the cycle that I've found in Shinto. There's evidence of it 16,000 years ago, using this natural cycle from creation to manifestation. It's the way that we can unlock the difficulties in this world. It's always been here, but it's been very well hidden by societies, I think, because it is a way to unlock people from, I loved what you said in your book, George, when you said it was, the mindfulness is a journey from suffering to wisdom, the life planning is from wisdom to freedom, and then a golden civilization is about the freedom to the contribution, and I'm absolutely, completely on board with that. It's all about the legacy and creation of legacy at the end of the day. So yeah, so we're wrapping it on a bit there, but I get so excited about the subject, as you can see, George.
It's fantastic, Steve. Fantastic. Well, as you know, I mean, I'm continuing to do lots of life planning work, but my focus, I feel like a man on a mission right now, and my focus is very much with the feeling that civilization is under threat, democracy is under threat, and so I'm traveling. I head out tomorrow for Hong Kong, Singapore, Mumbai, and Tokyo. Hong Kong will be an interesting place to be in the midst of the struggles they're going through right now, but a huge focus, obviously, on America, and I'm significantly in the UK quite a bit. And the concern really is that are we moving to a place that becomes more and more autocratic, where our freedoms are then jeopardized, and our freedom, even down to the spiritual freedom, if you think what the Chinese did to the Tibetan Buddhist religion, or if you think what Henry VIII did back in the old days in the UK, it's quite possible for government to put a squelch on even spiritual freedom, even spiritual practice. So, but the notion is with the golden civilization is to bring, to give people an idea of how to make it so that it's sustainable. So it's not something under threat, but that it would survive forever, that it would be something that would last for thousands of years. And my optimism around this is that it's doable. We can do that. And that's one of the themes of EVOKE, is when a person has a powerful vision that they're passionate about, we support them. And that passion really helps make it happen. Any thoughts there?
Yes, so I really like the approach about planning the community. So I really love that. My focus, what I've been doing is I've been planning people one by one, because they say when we're sort of clever, we try to change the world. When we are wise, we try to change ourselves. And I feel that then helps them with their local family and friends. When they see the change in them, that helps them, and then when family and friends change, that helps the community. So there's a bottom-up approach that I'm trying to bring about change now, because I know, George, you and I work on this, obviously the transparency work. We're trying to bring greater market integrity and transparency to the global financial system, and that's very frustrating because the big players don't attend. They don't come to the discussions and the debates, and it could be decades before we actually see change down that route. Yes. So what I do now is I not just on one by one basis. I've trained as a professional speaker. I stand on stages and talk to large groups, as many people as possible who would listen, and tell them how the life plan, how the EVOKE process, how that can release them on this journey from suffering to wisdom, wisdom to freedom, freedom to contribution. And it's just, it is the way, and it's an ancient way, been used throughout civilizations and faiths and traditions for many, many centuries. And that is the way to break through the indoctrination that we see.
Yes. So let's talk more about that, because it's easy to get pessimistic about change, and then there are avenues to actually make change happen. And you're describing one that you and I both know that's very powerful, which is the EVOKE model in individual lives, inspiring them to live their life of freedom at the deepest level and then out into their communities. And it's It's fun for the client. It's fun for the person who gets life plan, because they finally feel like, wow, I've got it. You know, this is what I've always wanted, and now I can live it. And we make it happen time and again. And sometimes it's just about spending more time with their 6-year-old daughter. Sometimes it's about spending more time hiking the coast of England. You know, there are different things that bring the person alive. Often there are values that are part of that. At the same time, you come from the banking world. That was, you know, that was your career for so many years, Steve. And here in America, we had, way back coming out of the Great Depression, we had an act that you might recall that was called the Investment Advisor Act of 1940. And in it, it prescribed for investment advisors that they be fiduciaries. And but what happened over time was the industry figured out ways around the act. Well, we're not really advisors. Maybe we're not investment advisors. We're financial advisors, and that's something different. You know, they would figure out different ways, and they'd play one game for the regulators and another for their clients. And you saw that in a different language, kind of, if UK English is a little different, and certainly your regulations are. So one of the things I've seen in America is this movement to fee only, where there's no commission at all. Products are not, you don't have a relationship with a product company. A fee only advisor is completely independent of any product company at all. And even that, which began in the early 80s as an organized movement, it's grown, and you can see it, and you can take great pride in what it's done, but it's not come close to changing the culture of the big product companies. So one of my dilemmas here, thinking about civilization, you know, you can think about global warming. You could think, or climate change. You can think about surveillance technology that's increasing so dramatically in our in all societies, but particularly in the autocratic societies. You can think about autocracy and the loss of democracy and the squelching of freedom of speech, assembly, and the press. And you can see that those things could move with great hierarchical power relatively quickly. And even though you have hope when you see protests or whatever, you can also see the challenges. So one of the great things about EVOKE is that it inspires us so much that we just go, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to live that life now. And so what I'm trying to do is actually host a series of conversations all over the world where people, and repeat conversations, so they'll do it again and again, where you have pockets of participative democracy that are growing and spreading and communicating with each other all over the world, so that we can actually hold banks' feet to the fire or governments' feet to the fire and say, no, we want it now. And there's one more thing, one more image I want to share with you that you've probably heard me say, but there's this Cassini satellite going out to Saturn's rings. And if it were off by a couple of inches for every mile, it wouldn't get there, right? But it does get there. And NASA calls that perfection of trajectory and aim integrity, and integrity of systems. So one of the things I'm arguing is, let's make all of this happen in our lifetime. In fact, in this generation, in the next 20 years, let's create the vision so powerfully that people can't say no. And part of it's grassroots, but it's partly getting to the big companies too and saying, no, it's time to change.
Absolutely, George. I mean, the people who run the big companies, they are baby boomers, Generation X. Yeah. And US Trust did a research about, when it comes to money, only 1 in 5 consider impact. Wow. But the millennials, the majority of millennials consider impact when it comes to money and investing. So we might have a couple of decades before the millennials get onto the boards, but I want to change things now. And that's one of the things I did when I was in the bank, to change things, markets very quickly. So
I know you did.
I changed the life and pension industry very quickly, and then I've changed the asset management very quickly. So I've been making a call to try and say, can we change the financial industry very quickly by changing the way we treat our customers, the way we treat our clients. Can we treat the client as the customer, not their money? Because it's going to be not just a better outcome for the customer, it's going to be a better outcome for the institution. So I'm trying to find that up and coming financial newcomer to the market that wants to do something different, and spotlight them, give them the spotlight and encouragement and all the opportunity they want, because that's how change happens quickly in the market, if we get players like that. And I think your community groups are the same, because once people see what they're doing, then they're going to very quickly want to get on board. So I love what you're doing, George. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. You'd be amazed. Do you remember Julian Powell?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Julian has one of the Golden Civilization Conversation groups that has gone on now. I think they've had 7 meetings, and so they're committed to really make a difference. And there's a core group within that group that is committed to making a manual for wisdom.
Yeah,
from age 6 to 96. So we're going to see the early stages of that coming out very soon. So we're very excited about what is beginning to develop, but we're really at the earliest stages of making participative democracy really happen.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
It is. Anything else, Steve? We're going to close soon. Is there anything else that you'd really like to say? And I want to say that Steve was talking a minute ago about transparency, the Transparency Task Force, which is a wonderful group. You can look it up. Steve and I have both been active members of it, and spoken with them, and actually they've given us both awards, which is pretty awesome, Steve. And I wonder, but you have your own organization. I wonder if you want to share anything about that, or if there's anything else you'd like to say before we close.
So I kind of wanted to build on what you've been doing. So I've now published my own book, George.
Great.
Yeah, just to show you on the video here, you can see it. It's called Your Money or Your Life.
Great.
The subtitle is Unmask the Highway Robbers, Enjoy Wealth in Every Area of Your Life.
Yeah, wow, great.
The highway robbers are the unaccountable hierarchies of profit and power that you referred to. And I took unmasking them, because not only do I do that through the transparency, but I kind of pursue them globally through asset recovery channels, because the government and powers that be are very proactive in helping people who've lost their life savings and helping them to get it back. So I'm trying to help people in that area. So that's the highway robbers. But enjoy wealth in every area of your life, George, is when I'm doing my exploration, what I'm looking for is mind, body, heart, and spirit. It goes in every area of their life.
Fantastic.
So I kind of bring that to the fore and make sure we got balance. Because in balance, when we have balance, then when we have progression towards wisdom. So that's what I just thought I'd mention that.
Fantastic, Steve. And you can hear me. I'm already getting pinged. I'll turn that off. But it's been great having you on here. I'd love to. I hope we can see you soon. Maybe next time I'm in the UK, and see if we can link up.
Good luck with your travels, George. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. You're going to India as well, I believe, is it?
I do. I'm going back to India, second time. Yeah, very excited about it. Well, thank you, Steve. Wonderful to be with you, and good luck with the book, with your projects. Keep us in the loop. I love seeing your posts, so let's continue.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, George. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve. Okay.
Take care now. Bye now. Bye.